So if you're watching this video, you probably don't need to be sold on why you need to be doing more outbound right now, right? You're an account executive that's being asked to self-source more pipeline. You're probably not going to hit your quota without it. You can't rely on the SDR, marketing team, etc. to help you hit quota. And if you're a sales development rep, you're probably being asked to make more phone calls, send more emails, etc., so that you can support the extra AEs that you now have to help fill pipeline for. This masterclass is going to give you everything that you need to book outbound meetings with your ideal customers. So messaging, we're going to talk about what to say, what's working right now. We're going to talk about targeting and prioritization. So what accounts to focus on, which ones to ignore. We're going to talk about phone, email, social, sequencing. And lastly, we're going to talk about AI and how to use AI to make all of this a little bit easier for you. My name is Jason Bay. I'm CEO at Outbound Squad. We train some of the top sales teams in the world, companies like Shopify, Zoom, Gong, Rippling, etc. We've worked with over 200 plus teams in the last 3 or 4 years, and I'm going to give you everything that you need to land high quality meetings with your buyers. And before we get started, I know you're chomping at the bit. You probably want the scripts, the templates, etc. The reason why we're going to start with prioritization and messaging first is it doesn't matter how good your script or your template is if you're reaching out to the wrong person. And in order to really customize this stuff, you got to understand how the messaging works, because the scripts, the templates, it's only as good as the rep that's using it. Section 1, we're going to talk about prioritization. So this is what I call the martini glass shaped pipeline. So the idea here is that you don't want your sales funnel to look like a funnel. You actually want it to look like a martini glass. And what that means is we're going to take fewer opportunities and deals. You're going to shrink that down and you're going to go deeper into the accounts where you're most likely to get engagement from your buyer. So the key idea here is it's not about productivity and increasing how many touches that you can put out or how many accounts you can reach out to. It's really about narrowing this down and prioritizing where you spend your time. So the first thing that we need to talk about is what I refer to as the hierarchy of relevance. So this is going to inform your segmentation strategy. There's this saying that the list is the strategy. So when you're doing outbound, again, because it's so much harder, it's really, really important that you're very picky about where you choose to spend time. So if I were to use an example, and I'll kind of walk you through this, there's kind of 4 layers here. There's persona, so the type of buyer that you're reaching out to based on their role. There's the industry in which that account exists. There's company-specific stuff, and then there's individual-specific stuff. So if we start at the very top, what we want to think about with personas, I'll give you an example. We have a client that sells an e-com solution. So when they looked at the personas, they looked at all of the buyers that are engaged in the sales cycle with them. There's an IT buyer that gets involved at some point. There's a marketing buyer. There's a digital marketing buyer. There is a finance buyer. And there's typically someone on the revenue side that's involved with this too. Those are 5 different buyer types. But when we did this exercise, we actually looked at, well, where do we get the most meetings? Which of those meetings are the most likely to turn into a qualifying opportunity? And where do we win deals? What we found out is that, hey, we actually don't want to talk to IT people. We're going to bring them in later. We don't want to start a sales cycle with them. The marketing team, these tend to be the champions. Sure, the revenue leaders ultimately going to control the budget, but the marketing leaders are the people that really champion this. So we wanted to focus on the marketing leaders. The next layer that we looked at with the industry, again, there were all kinds of options there. There was everything from like outdoor apparel to physical goods and like local businesses selling stuff. There was like enterprise businesses selling e-com. There's all kinds of companies that sell stuff online. What we found again is that, hey, these outdoor brands that tend to have a presence inside of malls, etc., like these are the ones where we win the most business. Let's focus on those the most. So we have a really cool resource below. So if you want to know a little bit more about relevance and what type of relevance is going to have the highest reply rate, we actually studied 85 million cold emails with the help of Gong. And one thing that they really in detail looked at was company triggers versus personal triggers versus signal-based triggers, etc., and what performs best. So make sure to grab that in the link below. Section 2, messaging. What we're going to talk about in this section is how to speak the language of your buyer and increase your contact rates by 2 to 3 times. There is nothing more annoying as a buyer myself, a business owner, someone reaching out to me and talking about what they do in a language in which I do not understand. Most of us sell things and have buyers that don't work at our companies. And most of us have never done the job of the people that we're actually selling to. So the language you communicate with them is super, super important. So there's an exercise that you can do here that will really tee up and prep you to create really good talk tracks and cold emails. We want to start here first. So there's 4 parts to what I refer to as a messaging matrix, okay? There's priorities, there are current solutions, problems, and aspirations. So if we think about the cybersecurity buyer, for example, let's talk about the CISO. There are certain priorities that this CISO has around risk in their company, reducing that risk. There are current solutions. So there's software that they're using. There's maybe teams that they've tasked to use spreadsheets to track alerts and all of that kind of stuff. There are problems with that. Hey, if our team is tracking alerts on spreadsheets, they're not getting the real-time data and insights around what's happening right now. It actually exposes the company to a massive amount of risk, etc. And then there are the aspirations. The aspiration is, if we were to look ahead 6 to 12 months, what does this individual really want to accomplish, and what do they really want to do? What do they want to feel? And in this case, for the CISO, they really want to feel confident with all of the executive stakeholders in saying that, hey, we're secure. We've lowered the risk as much as possible, and I feel confident that we're buttoned up in our OT environment. So what's really important here is that I did not talk about the product that they sell at all. All we've did is talk from the buyer's lens, their priorities, current solutions and how they get the job done, the problems that they experience, and then their aspirations. So what I would recommend doing is a couple things. There's a couple cheat codes here. When I first started doing this, we didn't really have AI, okay? So this is one of the instances in which AI will work really well. You can literally take call transcripts if your sales calls are recorded. You can have it look through the websites. You can have it look through customer-facing materials, anything that you have that has buyer language around what they care about and their problems. You can upload it into a ChatGPT or a Google Gemini, and it'll literally create a messaging matrix for you. Down below, what's linked up is some of those prompts that you can use to build out some of that messaging. So that's where it starts. The second thing that's really important is your offer. So it's not good enough to just have relevant messaging anymore. You got to think about, what am I going to give the buyer in return for their time? The irony here is that you want your buyer's time, but it's the last thing that you should ask for. So in other words, when we looked at the data, when you ask for time versus making an offer, you're literally decreasing the reply rate by up to 28%. So offers and giving the buyer something in return for their time are really valuable. So you got to think about the reason why people take meetings, right? They either have an urgent problem to fix right now, or they have FOMO. So problems to fix right now, that's only going to be 3% statistically of your market. FOMO is, oh, I'm going to learn something about what my competitors are doing or what my peers are doing. That's what your offer is going to address. So there's 3 types of offers. Easy, medium, and hard. Easy is what I call selling the blind date. This is what anyone can do. One of our clients sold hardware and software as a service. It was an automated welding solution. So the way they sold the blind date was, hey, I wanted to put you in touch with Dave. He actually has about a decade of experience working with VPs of manufacturing like yourself at companies like X, Y, and Z. You're going to learn a lot about what's working with the labor market around welders, how you're automating stuff, etc. Medium is a one-to-many offer. So typically what you're going to take is an insight here that can be repurposed across a bunch of prospects. One of my clients that sells into e-com, their marketing department actually mystery shopped 300 businesses. And what they were able to present and use when they were doing outbound is they were able to call people up and say, hey, I noticed that your response time via email was twice as long as your competitors A, B, and C. Would you like to hop on a call to talk about how that might be impacting the sales on your website, the conversion rates right now? So you have these one-to-many offers. They could be benchmarks. It could be stuff that you guys leverage in webinars. You might use AI to create some of these insights for you. But what I would think about is, how can I put together something that's going to apply across a broad buyer group? Lastly, the hard one is the one-to-one offer. The one-to-one offer is a custom audit or assessment. We do this at Outbound Squad, right? We'll hop on a call and do a custom cold calling audit. We'll actually listen to some calls, look at their talk tracks, etc. It requires a lot of effort, but it's really, really valuable for the right type of buyer. That might be a cybersecurity audit for you. Again, we have a client that sells an e-com solution. They would actually go through and buy something off the website and build out a whole report talking about all of the gaps in the pipeline. So you got to really think about your offer. If you're a little stuck here, the best place to start is by selling the blind date. If you're looking for examples of different types of offers, make sure to check out the link below. Again, we did a big study with Gong, 85 million cold emails. We analyzed the different types of offers and the data behind it, so make sure to grab that. Section 3, what we're going to talk about here is sequencing. The purpose of this section is to really remove the mystery behind how many times you should reach out, across what channels, what works, how should I space it out, etc. So if that's a little bit of a mystery to you right now, I'm going to give you the blueprint so that when you decide to reach out to a prospect, you know exactly what to do. So here's how this is going to work. I call this the KISS framework. It's keep it simple sequencing. Let's not overthink it. So it's multi-day, multi-touch, multi-channel. Multi-day, it's very simple. No matter how many touches that we tell you that you should execute in order to get a meeting, it doesn't matter if you don't spread it out. So in other words, if we say 15 touches is the magical amount of touches, you can't do that all in one day, right? You're gonna get a ton of unsubscribes. So multi-day, we should spread out the entire sequence 3 to 4 weeks. Multi-touch, we need to reach out at least 12 to 15 times across email, phone, and social. And then multi-channel, by neglecting one of those channels, you're literally decreasing your response rate by up to 2/3. So it needs to be phone, email, plus social. We cannot rely on a single channel anymore. So there's a couple best practices that I want to share so you know kind of how this looks. The best way to do this to make it super simple is do 3 weeks, and every week is going to follow the same pattern. On day 1, I'm going to send an email, I'm going to make a phone call, and then I'm going to send a social touch. I'm going to do all 3 of those at the same time. There's a lot of great data out there that supports contact rates will increase by up to 3x if we batch the touches together. So if we do email plus a phone call, or a phone call plus a LinkedIn touch, etc., we're going to increase the contact rate because everything is going to the smartphone. Day 2, what we're going to do is we're going to give it a business day rest, and we're going to reach out now on a Thursday, and then we're going to do a follow-up phone call plus a bump email. One way that you could prioritize those phone calls is you could say, hey, I'm only going to call the people that actually open up the emails that I send them, right? I'm going to follow the engagement. The way that we can do the emails is we're going to keep the email on the same email chain, and we're going to bump the email. There's all kinds of different bump emails that you can use. In the description below, we've actually linked to a couple different bump email templates and the response rates and etc. that you can take a look at. So that's the KISS framework, nice and simple. Section 4, let's get super tactical and talk about how to use the phone, how to use email, and then where social might mix into here. So let's dig into cold calling. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. There's so much nuance with cold calling. I think people try to oversimplify it actually and don't give it the attention that it deserves. And to simplify it today and make it easy for you to see how this comes together and to give you some really simple techniques to apply, I want to break it down into 3 sections. So there's an intro, there is a hook, and then there's a close. So our intro, the reason why I want to spend a bunch of time here is that the first 60 seconds of the call is where most cold calls are won and lost. The success rate on the average cold call right now is about 5%. So let's talk about what to do in that intro. What I want you to think about right now is what is going through the head of the buyer when they decide to pick up the call and it's from an unknown number. I think we can all agree here that buyers don't pick up cold calls on purpose, right? They thought that you were the doctor. They thought that you were someone from their kid's school. Maybe they thought that you were a client, a coworker, whatever it might be. They don't pick it up on purpose. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get an opt-in, okay? One of my favorite techniques, it's not the only technique, but is a permission-based opener. So what you can see on the screen here is some stats on the types of openers that work really well and the types of openers that don't. And we studied 300 million cold calls with Gong and 30 Minutes to President's Club. And what we found is there are very specific types of things that work for your opener, and there are very specific types of openers that do not work. Asking someone how their day is going, if you caught them at a bad time, etc., that's going to be a fraction of the effectiveness of using a permission-based opener or a have you heard my name tossed around opener. So I'll give you an example. One of the things that I like to use is I like to pack relevance into the front part of the opener. So let's say that I'm calling on behalf of a cybersecurity company that's one of our clients right now, right? I saw that they opened up a manufacturing plant. I might say, hey Dave, it's Jason. I was calling about the recent plant that you guys opened up in Dallas. Again, it's Jason with XYZ company. You got a minute for me to share the reason for my call? So I'm going to share that opener right there and the relevant context. And I'm going to introduce myself real quick and just ask if they have a minute. Another variation of that, the have you heard our name tossed around opener, I really love this one. It's a great way to build in social proof. There's ways that you can add a localized element into the opener as well. One of the clients that we work with actually sells construction services. So they sell into companies that are house painters, woodworkers, contractors, etc., and actually incorporate a lot of these elements with a lot of success. So it sounds like this. Hey, Dave, I was giving you a call because we actually work with some of the largest house painters up there in Seattle. It's Jason with XYZ Company. Have you heard our name tossed around? So I'm going to add in some of the social proof. I'm going to add in some localization there if it's applicable to you. And then we're going to ask, have you heard our name tossed around? So you should be getting to the next part of the call about 80 to 90% of the time. So the next part of the cold call, we're still in the intro, is the reverse pitch. I call it a reverse pitch because you need to hold back every instinct you have at this point to pitch the prospect. So I'm going to reverse that and talk about the problem. So that might sound something like this. Hey, Dave, great. The reason I was giving you a call, a lot of the painters that we're talking to in Seattle, one of the biggest things they're having challenges with right now is when they run against competitive bids and multiple contractors are bidding on something, it takes them hours to put together the bid, and oftentimes they lose because they just can't get it fast enough. The second thing that we hear is rework. So they get done and they complete a project and the color is not quite what the client thought it was going to be, and it just creates a really poor customer experience. I'm curious, how does that compare to your world and what you're seeing in your day-to-day right now? So what we did there is we packed in the problem, and we're seeing if the problem resonates with the prospect. At that time, they're probably going to ask you what your company does. And we'll talk about what to do about that here in a second. So problems, reverse pitches, that's where we want to go with the intro. So let's talk about what a bad intro might sound like using that same company example. So if you said, yeah, Dave, really appreciate you taking the call. We're implementing some AI into our estimating tools right now to help contractors do their estimates faster. The second thing that we're doing is we have this 3D imaging technology that will actually help create a floor plan for your client. You can throw pictures up there, etc. All of this is part of our Pro Builder package, and I'd love to do a demo for you to show you more about what that looks like and to see if it might be good to set you up on our solution. So I've only talked about the solution, the features, what it does in that scenario. I'm not talking in a language that the contractor actually understands. And what we found is that it's about 3 times more effective to be leveraging problem-based language versus buzzwords. Okay, so now that we've talked about the reverse pitch, let's talk about what to do in the hook. You've given your reverse pitch. You're going to get probably one of 3 responses. Yes, this resonates. No, this doesn't. Or maybe they pick one of the things, okay? So if they tell you that none of that resonates, this is a moment where you can just fall on your sword, is what I've heard this referred to as, and say something like, hey, it sounds like I might have missed the mark here. Most of the contractors I talk to are typically dealing with some of those challenges. It sounds like you might have this figured out. What's been working really well for you? And just ask them to tell you what's been working really well. And you'll find that a lot of people tend to open up and share what's working well, or they'll correct you. Typically, people will correct you. If a prospect says, hey, yeah, one of these things does resonate, or all of that resonates, that's where we're going to move into the hook and use what I refer to as money questions. The goal of the money question is to find some sort of problem, because that problem is going to be the reason for the meeting. You're going to have a much higher show rate to the meeting if it's to solve a specific problem that the buyer might be having, okay? So one of the frameworks that I love for money questions is you ask the question from the point of view of someone that would be using your product or service. So let's use the contractor example. One of the problems that they have is when they go to do an estimate, it takes a lot of hours of manual work after the estimate, right? And they end up not following up in time, losing the bid, etc. So I might ask something like this. Hey, I'm really curious, if I was an estimator on your team and I had to deliver the estimate on the spot with the client without having to do any work through spreadsheets, paper, etc., how would I go about doing that? Hey, if I was a salesperson on your team and I wanted to show the client what their house would look like after they changed colors, how would I go about doing that? All right, so you're going to ask this user point of view question that's like really good, that exposes a gap. The other framework you can use, and this is really the most common one, is you simply state a problem that one of their peers has shared, and you can do it in story form, and you just ask them how it resonates with them. Okay, this is the most generic way that you can do this, and it's also very effective. So if we were to use an example in cybersecurity, it might sound like this. One of the things that we're seeing, and in particular, this happened with a customer I was working with the other day, is that they were getting so many alerts that they didn't have the bandwidth on their team to actually go through and prioritize what was important right now versus what was just noise. And I'm curious for you, how do you guys separate signal from noise and know what's important right now without a person having to manually look at that and potentially miss it? So I'm asking that spotlight question that's going to expose a problem, and I'm sharing context around what I've already seen. So at this point in the hook, you should have found something to latch onto. That something becomes the reason to close and ask for the meeting and move into the third part of the call. The close here, the meeting really is yours to lose at this point. I think one of the most awkward things for a rep and doing these calls myself is transitioning into the close. Okay, like how do I know when it's time? When in doubt, just ask for the meeting. And the way that you can segue into this is saying something like this. So what I heard is that you're not getting back to some of those bids fast enough, and you're losing more than you'd like to some of your competitors. How about we set aside some time to talk about how other painters in the area are handling this when I'm not cold calling you in the middle of your day? Do you have your calendar handy? And you just transition right into the close, right? And then it's set time, confirm the time, etc. One pro tip I would give at this point, you want to confirm the calendar invite while you have the prospect live on the call. The show rates that you should be shooting for are at least 7 or 8 out of 10 of the meetings that you set should show. So one of the simple things, and the reason why this is so important, is that when you send a calendar invite through and you haven't had a lot of email communication with that prospect, oftentimes the calendar invite won't hit their calendar until they accept it from their email. So I'm just going to say something like this. Hey, would you mind making sure that that calendar invite went through and just hitting accept real quick? I want to make sure it didn't get sent to spam. That's it. That's all you got to do. Then I'm going to reconfirm the agenda and what we're talking about, and then I'm going to end the call. So intro, hook, close. Let's talk voicemail. Statistically, 95% of the time, you're going to be leaving a voicemail, right? The prospect's not going to pick up the phone. So you're mostly going to be leaving voicemails. I think the first thing we should talk about is it worth it to actually leave a voicemail? And the stats would back this up. I see this in practice all the time as well. Orum's got a ton of data. They measured this across millions of outbound cold calls. Your connect rate on the second, third, fourth, fifth time you call a prospect actually goes up by 25.8% if you leave an effective voicemail after the first call. The second reason why you should leave voicemails is you can use it as a way to increase the email reply rate. So we did a big study with Gong, 300 million cold calls, and what we found is the sequences in where cold calling and voicemails were present, the reply rate was 3 times higher in those sequences. The key here is that we're not going to ask for a call back. We're going to point the voicemail to the email. Okay, so there's a really simple formula that you can use for this. I want to open up with some sort of relevance, drop some social proof, and then I'm going to have a really low lift CTA. Here's what that might sound like. Dave, just saw that you do house painting projects in Seattle, and one of the things we're seeing from painters right now is that they're losing bids because they can't get to the estimates fast enough. I had a couple of ideas that I just emailed you. The subject line is estimates. It's Jason with XYZ Company. No need to call me back. The subject line is estimates. Again, it's Jason. Talk to you soon. That's it. That's all you got to do. Really simple. Voicemails, again, you should leave them. I would, on average, if you're doing 6 calls over the course of your sequence, leave 3 out of the 6 calls you should be leaving a voicemail. Let's talk email. The best analogy I could use to really illustrate the importance of being very good at email is this idea around cognitive load theory. Simply stated, cognitive load theory is that the more we reduce the amount of effort it takes to comply with our ask, the higher the likelihood we are going to get compliance with that ask. In this case, it's an open and it's a reply to our email. So we have to make it incredibly easy to open, read, and respond to. So there's a couple things at play here with the subject lines. One, what we found in the data is that the open rate is slightly higher when we use lowercase words. The idea behind this is that we want this subject line to look as much like an internal email as possible. So lowercase, ideally we're not using any type of solution-based language. We're talking only about something that's either relevant to them or a problem that they might be experiencing, and it needs to be 4 words or less. That's our subject line. The next part of the email is the relevance. It's the opener. It's the reason why we're reaching out. It's the part that's customized to the prospect. Couple reasons why you should do this and a couple tips. 1, 5 times more likely to get a reply if you personalize the email. So you can't generically open up an email and say, "Hi, Bob," and then expect that every prospect gets the same exact email after that and to get any kind of replies from that. It's got to be customized. That first line has to be customized. The second thing is we actually looked at different types of relevance. I mentioned this a little bit earlier with our segmentation strategy, but there's industry level stuff that we can talk about. There is persona based stuff that we can talk about. There's things that are specific to the company and things that are specific to the individual. What we found is that with director plus job titles, so anyone that's a director, VP, or in the C-suite, they're actually 50% more likely to respond to something that is relevant to their company than to them as an individual. These folks are closer to the business problems and the business outcomes, so you need to talk about things that are relevant to their company. That cybersecurity example I keep using, opening up new manufacturing plants, that's something that's relevant to the company that these C-suite bigwigs are going to care about. What they don't care about as much is you knowing where they went to college. With ICs and managers, we found the opposite to be true. The individual personalization works extremely well on these folks. They're not as close to the business outcomes. Okay, so that's the relevance part. The next part of the email is the problem and the hook. The big thing is that when you speak in a language that is very solution focused, remember, you're not talking in a language that is universal between you and the buyer. Their problems, stuff going on in their world, that is the thing that is most relevant to the buyer. So we need to open up with a clear, crisp problem statement, and then we need to follow that up with social proof and a value statement, okay? And here's an example of what that looks like, right? We need to have that problem, then we tie it back to social proof. So instead of saying, here's how the solution works, here's what we help with, etc., it's other companies or other types of companies or specific name drop of companies. Like, these are the ones that we're doing this with, and here's the outcome from that. Social proof is going to substantially increase your reply rates to your emails. Last but not least is our call to action. We studied all kinds of different call to actions with Gong. For a long time, the interest-based call to action was really popular, right? Don't ask for time, ask for interest. So instead of saying, are you free tomorrow at 2 p.m., you would say, interested in chatting further. Whatever it might be, it was a yes or no question that they could simply respond to. What we found is that the reply rate is 28% higher with the presence of an offer. We've already talked about what those offers are. Just know that when you include them in your cold emails, the reply rate will go up by 28%. This is the lowest hanging fruit that we can give you in this masterclass. Use offers, give something valuable to the prospect. So that's our reply method. That's the email framework. Short, concise subject line, relevant opener, a problem statement, a social proof and value statement, followed by a short and concise call to action. Last but not least, let's talk about social. So again, a reminder, with our sequence framework, we're going to call, email, and then have a social touch the first time we reach out to someone. And we're only going to do 3 social touches on average, unless you find something in particular that's unique to you or your industry that works better. So let's just talk about that connection request on LinkedIn right now. There's 2 schools of thoughts here. And there's like 2 very dramatic camps, I feel like. One is like, do not put anything in the connection request. And then one is like, well, let's completely customize and do all of this fancy special stuff for that individual. What we found is that doing one or the other, both of them can work. It's the in-between stuff that we should avoid at all costs. So if you're tempted to send anything like, hope we could connect, I'd love to follow up with your work, like all of that like canned stuff, that's not going to work that well. Leave it blank, which I would highly recommend starting with leaving it blank just to see what the connection request percentage looks like. A 20 to 30% acceptance rate on your connect requests is right where you want to be. So if you're getting that doing blank connection requests, that's really good. If you want to do the opposite of that and go fully customized, you're going to essentially use this as a way to bump the email that you just sent them. Okay. So what that example might look like is something like what you see on the screen here, right? Hey, I sent you an email regarding, and then maybe the subject line, right? You put in the email. I dropped a few good ideas in there on how to reduce steady build times. I wanted to put a face to the name and connect here. I'm going to drop the subject line of the email in there. I'm going to let them know why they should go take a look at it and just let them know that I want to connect. Super simple. If you want our exact talk tracks, our email templates, etc., make sure to check the links below. We have tons of great examples of what all that stuff looks like and the data to back it up as well. Section 5. Let's talk about AI. It allows us to work using a red pen instead of a black pen. What does that mean? Red pen allows me to edit stuff So in other words, I'm being served something that's 80% of the way there and I take it to the finish line, versus black pen is creating things completely from scratch. When I have to black pen things, that's the stuff that really like eats away your mental energy when you do that. So it's all about serving stuff up for you. The important clarification here though is that AI requires human touch. It requires you to edit the email, you to add the finishing polish. Nothing that I'm going to suggest for you right now is a way to put your stuff completely on autopilot. So what I suggest is we follow the 10-80-10 rule, okay? 10 is I'm going to do 10% of the task up front. So let's say I'm having AI write my cold email for me. The 10% is I'm going to prompt AI to do the account research, to find the relevant pieces that's going on in this company and with this individual. I'm going to tell it what the email framework should be, and then I'm going to do 80% in the middle. That's them actually doing the task, right? The AI, the agent, whatever it might be. That's 80% of the work there. The last 10% I'm going to edit, refine, etc. So it's super important that we prompt well. I want to talk about prompts and what a good versus bad prompt looks like, okay? And again, you can download some of these prompts at the links below. A good prompt has context, so it's very, very specific. What's the objective that we're trying to accomplish and the context surrounding it? What's a good or bad example of this look like? And then what are the specific directions that you would like for me to follow? Most reps make the mistake of assuming that the AI knows more than it actually does. So they say things like, I'm reaching out to the CISO at XYZ company, can you help me write a cold email? You need to teach AI exactly what good looks like, give it examples, and give it specific parameters, because it's a garbage in, garbage out type of situation. It's only as good as the person prompting it. So make sure that you're leveraging great prompts. And last but not least, let's talk about where we can use AI. What's it good for? I already gave you one of those things, messaging. Messaging is one of the best places to start because again, that's the thing that's gonna populate the talk tracks that you wanna use, the voicemail scripts, the email templates, etc. So what I would do immediately after watching this masterclass is down below, grab the prompts where you can build out messaging using call transcripts, marketing language, any kind of internal business case documents, anything with customer-facing language where you have their problems, their goals in their words is going to be great for messaging. So you can use that to, again, create talk tracks, emails, etc. The other thing that we haven't really talked about is how to use AI for account planning. So we live in a world now where you don't have to spend an hour researching a company to create a hypothesis and why you think it would be a good fit for them to talk to you. You can literally do this in 5 minutes. So make sure to grab the prompts below to do account planning. It's going to teach you everything from what to look for in the account. It's going to give context to the account around the problems that you solve and what you're looking for. And you're also going to teach it how to summarize it and make it really short, concise, and digestible for you as well. So that's AI. Make sure to grab the prompts and the templates below to get started. Awesome. So that's our masterclass. We've talked about prioritization, right? The importance of I'm not reaching out to every single person in every account, right? I need to prioritize my effort and focus on the low-hanging fruit. We've talked about messaging, the importance of speaking the buyer's language because they're going to respond to their language, their problems, their goals, etc., not your product voice. The third thing that we talked about was the number of touches, right? The blueprint and really removing the mystery behind how many emails to send, how many phone calls, what order to do them in, etc., right? We need to keep it nice and simple. Then we talked about phone, email mastery, social, etc. And then lastly, we talked about how to make all of that easier with AI. All right, if you dug the content today, I highly recommend you check out the Outbound bundle. It is the best course content that you're going to find on Outbound. There's a cold calling portion of this. Nick and Armand created based on their cold calling sucks book, 300 million data points that they study to find the best openers, talk tracks, etc. It's literally a walkthrough and day-by-day breakdown of exactly how to take all of the content that we talked about today, customize it and make it for yourself, and also just get immense detail around what's working right now. And then I partnered up with Nick and Armand to create the cold email bundle as well. So make sure to check that out. We studied 85 million cold emails with Gong. Everything that we talked about today times 10 with all of the examples, the data points, etc. So go make sure to grab it.
That's a wrap, folks. If you like this video, the #1 way to tell us to do more stuff like this is to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell. It's the #1 free way that you can support the channel and make sure that we can keep doing content like this. If you like this too, there are some videos that are down here or down below. I don't even know where they put them anymore. Go click on some of these other videos that'll help you get better at selling or get to President's Club or whatever you're trying to do. Maybe it'll entertain you on your couch. Alrighty, peace, y'all.